What do you want done? I'm the owner. I can take care of it for you. We should not judge books by covers.
Nope.
Super cool. All right. Well, Tom Young, thank you so much for your positive focus. For those of the rest of us that were on early, I'm going to trust that you are multitasking, finishing up that last critical truth concepts calculation, email to a client, possibly even meeting to a client. I have been well known to in Zoom calls going like, okay, goodbye, as I put my headset on for my next call, which is right, different headset than the microphone that's right there. So yeah, that's good. All good. The beauties of working remotely. So fun. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
And we
Thank
got
you.
the live stream up, so we're good.
Nice. Patrick, you're a technological wizard.
I want to go that far, but
We'll give it to you today, though. So, all right. Happy September. Happy fall. Such a great time in the world for us to be grateful for the things that we can be grateful for and to dig the good out of things that are challenging, whether they be in our own lives or in the news or what have you, because there are definitely some things out there in that category, and we wouldn't be able to be as grateful for the good things if we didn't have them. So always be digging the positive. Does that mean that I always can? No, I find times when I can't dig the positive out of it either, but with practice, you get better and better and better at it. So our conversation for today is designed to compare the typical financial planning space where dollars are typically doing one job. They are set for retirement. They are set for educating a child. They are set for our emergency money. They're set for an investment, whatever it is. They're typically just doing one thing. And as you know, in the prosperity economics space, not only do some of the products we use, but also the strategies we like to employ, in other words, the way that we use those products, enable us to have dollars that can handle all of those jobs, either simultaneously or one on top of another, or one and then another one again, and then again and again. So we talk about dollars doing multiple jobs. In other words, the dollar is not just for retirement or education, the dollar is for both. Or as I like to say, for three different things, win times three, because I'm always looking for myself to win, because in order for others to win, I have to win also. And I can't keep helping others if I'm not winning along the way. The other person has to win. And then there's always a third party. It might be the insurance company, might be some other person. It might be a middleman or what have you, it might be a provider, where we're getting that win times three environment. And then this dollar doing multiple jobs, as we know, has what is often called a multiplier effect. So now I like to bring the math in of 1 + 1 = 11, right? You'll hear what, yeah, I thought so. You'll hear 1 + 1 is 2, obviously 1 + 1 is 3. People use that terminology to imply some exponential impact. But I really like to look at the 1 and the 1 as an 11 number together because of the truly exponential impact that dollars can have, that our thinking can have when we get things aligned, when we're connected with principles, when we are enabling dollars to support each other rather than being in silos. And so it's just an analogy that I find helpful and gets commentary. So before Patrick, who I know has some deep thoughts about this, as he always does, before he jumps in, Todd, any additions that you want to share on that thought or on that line?
No, I think that we'll get into that after Patrick talks, but it's so important. I mean, we have limited resources. There's a finite amount of money that we can make. There's a finite amount that we can save, even if we push stuff. So, ideally, the whole idea of making $1 do multiple jobs, anywhere we can find a place where one item can do multiple things, it's just going to make those finite dollars go that much further.
And if I know you well, you probably have like a Swiss Army knife or something similar in your pocket that is a beautiful example of the multiplier effect that we get with such things. All right, Patrick, I know you've had some thoughts on that. And yes, Michael, we did hear that Patrick got to climb Mount Everest. I think you better start with that story.
Well, it wasn't Mount Everest.
It was Mount Everest.
It was an endurance challenge called 29029, which is 29,029 feet, which is the elevation of Mount Everest. So there's a guy, well, actually there's three guys. One of them is Jesse Itzler. He's entrepreneur. His wife is Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx, and they own the Atlanta Hawks. And anyway, just a really, really cool, crazy guy. And then the other partners have, set multiple world records, whether it's hiking the 7 major peaks in 100 days or hiking to the South Pole and the North Pole within a certain amount of time. I mean, just crazy guys. So they created this event where about a half a dozen locations around the country, they find typically a ski resort peak, and they structure the event so that you hike over the course of 36 hours up to the elevation of Mount Everest. And so there was a mountain in Utah called Snow Basin Ski Resort, and it's like 2,300 feet of vertical elevation. So we had to hike it 13 times. And it was hard. I mean, yeah, it was hard, but I finished. So it was all day Friday and half the day Saturday. So we started at 6 a.m. I finished my first 10 rounds at 1 a.m. in the morning, and then got up at 6 and then finished the other 3. So still feeling it.
I bet.
Good challenge.
That's intense. All right. Well, tell us a little more. I just want to check in. We've got what looks like a hand raise or something. If you want to just throw in the chat box questions or what have you, we'll handle them that way. You can do the Q&A panel as well, whatever works better for you. Q&A is private, chat's not. So remember that. And Patrick, I know you've had some thoughts on this. So
yeah, I'll piggyback off of what you actually just said, which is Swiss Army knife. I think there are these two crossroads with society. On one hand, you have people getting used to products or platforms that do multiple things. I mean, our phones, right? Our phones are, a million things, right? It's not just a phone. It's communication. It's social media. It's a camera. You can unlock hotel room doors with it. You can unlock cars with it. It's GPS. It's a compass. It's now some of the new Amazon stuff, you can have product and actually show it in the room, the whole VR, not VR, AR, augmented reality, where you put furniture in your room and it can show you kind of how it looks and feels. This is an example of a platform, right, that is one thing but does multiple things. And then you look at, one of the parody progressive commercials where Flo is on the beach and can't talk about insurance for the day. And, there's a conversation going on of people wishing that they just had, their car insurance and their homeowner's insurance and that all together. Right. And so people are getting used to bundles. And I think it makes sense because, human beings, there's only so much energy we have, and our brain capacity is still evolving. And we're not used to just all the stuff that's going on. So we're constantly looking for ways to conserve energy. And I think that platforms, things that do multiple jobs are very intriguing naturally to people. But here's where the crossroads come. Financial products weren't designed for multidimensional use. They were designed for a single use. So on one hand, people are really intrigued and looking naturally, intuitively for things that do multiple jobs, yet financial products only do one job. So here we're presenting, our foundational product and the way in which we use it as one tool, one product that does multiple things. I mean, you mentioned there's a growth component, there's an insurance, life insurance, legacy component, there's asset protection component, there's the loan provision, there's, using for college, using for retirement, using for, investment purposes. You can just keep naming all the different things that it does And that's why, it's interesting. People like to compare, whole life to another product. And Todd, I don't know, I'll botch your saying, so I'll let you say it, where people can, compare, their best up against our worst, or whole life's worst, or something like that. I can't remember what the quote is. But the idea is that one product does one thing, ours is multiple things, right? The one that we advocate. And that's where I look at just a really interesting dynamic where we continually have to, explain multiple things that this one product does. And it's awesome, right? Because it allows us, the environment to help people understand it and start to use it. And it makes their life better in so many different ways, not just one way.
Yeah. And I think adding to what it is that you're talking about there, what we tend to do, I think, in the industry, or where the industry has shifted somewhat, is in talking and making the cash such a huge piece of the process. And yes, the cash is an important piece, but it's that multidimensional product that needs to be talked about, and not after the fact. I mean, we really need our conversations with our clients, the education process, the understanding of what it is that we're talking about doing, as all of those pieces. The disability waiver. Mr. Client, tell me something. Do you have disability insurance? Yeah, I've got all of the insurance company will give me. Great. What's going to happen to your savings in the event of a disability? Does your disability insurance cover 100% of your current income? Well, no way. They won't insure me for that amount of money. So what do you do about your savings piece? What is going to happen to your savings in the event of a disability? Well, it's going to disappear, right? So your future and all those plans you had are gone. How about a product that we could also add the ability to have some disability insurance on your savings through the waiver of premium? What about this death benefit? Instead of having term insurance as a separate asset that's pure cost, what if we had a product where it was integrated and it took care of this in the event of everything happening? And it goes right along with Vince Dodona's parallel paths piece is, okay, you want to get to this place out in the future. We look at that wealth curve. What are all the things that can go wrong and prevent that wealth curve from happening? What if we situated your financial strategy in such a way that we found an optimal product to fit in there that for the use of $1 actually bought multiple protections inside of there and made that curve happen in not just the perfect condition, which we know is pretty rare, but in all conditions?
So I want to add in on the insurance side of things. We had an interesting occurrence with a couple clients recently, and this is picking up on the idea of not only the whole life and all the jobs that it can do, but the additional jobs that we should be doing with our clients, even around spaces that we're not paid for. And many of us have been taught things about car insurance, home insurance, liability insurance, that whole P&C or property and casualty space, that enable us to be valuable to our clients. I don't know if Ken Green's on today, but he actually came from that business, and he spends like an hour. Now he's an engineer, so he's going to be a little more detailed, but an hour going over car, home, and liability insurance. So here's a quick story that you guys can certainly make use of. We had one client where they had a rental property that had a fire in it, and thankfully nobody was hurt. Yet, because insurance had not been updated, they received $40,000 for the house that was burned to the ground. Now, I don't know what the value of the house was. I didn't want to ask because I didn't want to pour salt on the wound, but I guarantee it was more than $40,000. We had another client that had a tree fall through their house. Also, thankfully, nobody hurt. The tree was a Y, so they got the trunk plus two other big, huge sections, pretty much destroyed the house. And when the adjuster came over to meet with that client, said, I have never seen an insurance policy this good. And I'm the upper level adjuster. I get the big jobs because this house was destroyed and everything is going to be taken care of, including all the pieces and parts of being out of the house and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's an example of somebody had done a very good job helping that one client have very thorough, complete coverage way beyond just the life insurance. And not that the other client maybe didn't have the job done, but it hadn't been updated, which was really interesting to me because I know I don't do as good of a job helping people keep things updated. I do a good job, I think, on the front end, but that updating that's just another aspect of the tentacles, if you will. This 1 + 1 = 11, right? It's consistent and ongoing. And, somebody says, I changed my address. Well, that needs to be a trigger. Oh, new house. Maybe liability umbrella needs to get updated. Maybe a move has occurred from state to state, and now there's a will and a trust that need to get updated, that kind of thing. So it's so important that we are super conscious that we have stories that we can share so that they resonate, quickly. You don't want to draw something out, but just really having that ability to help in more ways beyond what we're getting paid is going to make you more valuable to your clients.
I think this is where you were going with part of the reason you went down this road was that there are many aspects of whole life, whether it's, waiver of premium, disability element, you also have long-term care, you have, some legacy stuff, which will allow, a surviving spouse to purchase insurance at their current rate. I mean, there's more. The idea of going in and being multidimensional from the get-go, I can understand why advisors typically gravitate toward one idea, one component, because it's easier for a client to digest. But then going in and again, once you've established really one of the core pieces of why you want them to do business with you, whether it's cash, whether it's more of a retirement income strategy, however you're positioning whole life, that's when you then start to educate on other elements of their finances. I would start with other jobs that whole life can do, right? Talking about the other features, other bolt-ons that may in fact be very intriguing and beneficial to them. And then having stories around. I mean, stories are the best way to teach that, because again, the language of insurance, waiver of premium, I'm sure they could have found a better term, right? They would be more that someone can understand without an explanation. But that's, again, it's one of those, it gives us the opportunity to, talk about the benefit of it. But yeah, it's one of those, like, the multidimensional piece it's interesting, right? Because you can go too far and botch the sale and botch the relationship, or you can do it strategically, which is, little by little, piece by piece.
And that compartmentalizing, that's the way, like you said, so many advisors, they don't want to just focus on one product. The danger in that, in the big picture, is if they're not at least looking at the other products, there's probably some things that are directly contradictory to each other. That's where a lot of the problem comes in. And you look at people's previous financial quote planning that was done, and you see, well, you've got this on this side and you don't have that on that side, and these two really are offsetting each other. They don't make sense together. And so that big picture strategy kind of goes out the window. And yes, it is more work to make all those things fit, but boy, it's more complete piece for the client too.
I was going to ask if you guys remembered Vince Dodona. So this is the creator of the parallel paths that Todd mentioned earlier. And I do want to come back to that in your cash flow calculator. But so Vince Dodona, parallel paths, if you're curious about that, PEM Evolve, maybe Elizabeth, I think you're on. If you could pop PEM Evolve into the chat box, that's where you can get a bunch of video from Vince around parallel paths. Anyway, he realized that clients didn't understand the term death benefit. Like, this guy's 40 years in the business, and it had just in the past quarter dawned on him, thank you, Elizabeth, that clients didn't always understand that term. And then of course we have the, face value. So some insurance companies are using that on illustrations as if that's helpful. And so all of these kinds of things we need to be aware of. And we talk about watching our language around things like borrow against versus borrow from. And if we're talking borrow from, then it's the insurance company, not the policy, et cetera, et cetera. Well, what about stepping back and some of those other terms that we use and words that we use? I even find the word save, like everybody thinks of savings as a noun, but save as a verb, and I talk about it that way, is so critical, and nobody's talking about that. So that again is another way that you can set yourself apart. Plus, everyone's looking for automation. They want to automate their lives in every way possible. That's what technology does for us. There is no better way to automate savings. So automation verb, savings verb, than a whole life insurance premium that gets automatically debited from your checking account. Premium, right? There's another word that's such a challenge. Everybody immediately goes to all cost, because premium for car, home, and liability insurance and disability and health and all other kinds of insurance equals cost. And whole life premium equals cash value once you get into those later years. So these are things that I think we just say without even thinking about, and that I've, with some other people's help, realized in the last couple of years, I need to back off and really listen to what I'm saying, and making sure that what I'm saying is landing with the meaning that I want it to.
No, there's an art to communication, and with any financial products, I mean, there's inside, lexicon that we have habits form, right? And it just becomes part of our vernacular. And it's like, sometimes we don't realize when we're speaking to somebody, they disconnect, right? Just because, we're all words have meaning, but it doesn't mean that everybody understands all words. So that's where I look at, again, some of the features and benefits and plugins and bolt-ons to the products that we advocate as those foundational products. You got to, number one, talk about them, but then speak to how they relate to a person's life in their language and their words, hitting on the things that are important to them, specifically, problems, challenges, the subsequent pain they have, and then ultimately how this could be a solution. Obviously, you have a primary solution, which are these foundational core products, but then some of the ancillary benefits that they have, right? You got to also learn how to speak to those in simple terms. But there's huge opportunity here, and this is, I wish I could say that all clients that did business with our firm fully transacted and did everything that they should. It's just it's not reasonable, and I don't think that's happening in most most practices. And this is why, again, establishing an initial relationship is paramount, but then it's remembering that the relationship is a forever relationship. And there's millions of different talking points, a myriad of different benefits, products that we can offer people that we should be doing annual reviews, quarterly reviews. I mean, there's tons of opportunity to maintain that relationship and keep teaching people things.
Tom brought up the comparison to universal life with any other of its arms, like fixed indexed and regular indexed and variable and The next space inside the prosperity economics movement that we're going to introduce to you in maybe 2 or 3 weeks is actually a course called Universal. And it has a super fun 45-minute video that Todd Langford and Garrett Gunderson did that I don't think anybody's seen. It was done at a summit 2 years ago, but it wasn't like during the main session. So that's in there. And then there's a couple other client-facing documents that you can use around the Universal product that will help educate your clients. And I find save me so much time when this particular subject comes up. And then there's some deeper dives in there, as well as some additional things that Todd has created for the Truth Concepts community that anybody can make use of. There's public blog posts that you can turn to. So we're excited about what we could call PEM 3.0, I guess, if I can steal your 3.0, Todd, because there is going to just be additional benefits to you guys. And that's something I try like every 3 or 4 sentences with a client to say, and the benefit to you is about whatever it is that I'm talking about. So the benefit to you will be some very focused opportunity for education, which you can then turn literally right around and use with your clients. So if it's the Universal course, there's a 1-page handout. If it's the Evolve course, it's parallel paths, like watch a video, get the document, turn around the very next day and use it with clients. That's what our goals are. So the benefit to you will be very much a focus and very much a boots on the ground. This is what we do in our own practices. This is how it works space that I trust will be valuable to you. So keep an eye out for your email in another 2 or 3 weeks on the launch of PEM 3.0 and also the new universal course.
You know, Michael Isom mentioned the annual reviews and how vital they are. And I think that's the review, you almost need it on the calendar. And this goes back to what you were talking about earlier, Kim, about the life insurance or the homeowners policies. And the time has a way of eating away at what we're doing. It's so funny how time works. I was talking with your sister, Tammy, about this a little bit. A year from now is forever, but 10 years ago was yesterday. So it's hard to see the time frame when we look back and how long it's been, and people just forget. It's like, wow, it's been this long. Just an example on our end, we had a battery backup go out, and I was aggravated by it. And I know it was because of our fluctuating power from our rural co-op that we have here. But I thought, well, this thing only lasted a few years. And I look back, it was 11 years ago when I bought it. And I had no idea it had been that long. It's just time has a way of getting away from you. And so when we're talking about reviewing things like our liability limits, things like where we are income to death benefit, those kind of things, and where we are over time, it just goes by in a hurry, even though we can look out there in the future and it seems like it's going to be forever until we get to a certain place. It's really easy to get away from that. And so, term conversions, Mr. Client, you were talking to us about wanting to ship some of this off every year or so. It's been 3 years since we've talked. I think it's time we chip some of that off of there. It's those kind of pieces that it's just really easy to get away from.
Well, and for a lot of you that have been solely focused on the cash value side of the life insurance, adding in the element of human life value, starting to understand that yourself and being able to share that information with your clients is an opportunity for you to go back to your client, share additional value, and place additional coverage, because nobody can buy their human life value in round one in whole life insurance, but they can add term insurance, and helping people understand the difference between convertible term and what I call cheap term on the web and that kind of thing. Super helpful. Todd, do you want to share a little bit about the new graphic of the cash flow calculator that shares human life value so clearly, and even the little bit of an aha that you had in looking at that was about a month ago. Are you remembering the aha? Doesn't matter. Share the first part.
Let me put a capstone on the previous point.
But yeah, it is an important piece. It's amazing. Vince at the last summit said to me, he made a comment. He said, people don't look at numbers like you and I do, or like the industry did when we first got in 30 years ago. And the numbers were all people had. It was an important piece. And so I learned, I think over time, kind of like the Matrix, when they're looking at ones and zeros and they can see pictures of what's going on and the fights and all that kind of stuff. If anybody remembers the Matrix, because they just seen the ones and zeros so often they understood what they said. Well, I kind of gotten that way with the numbers. I can kind of paint the picture based on seeing the numbers. And I know most people don't look at things that way. But what I found was when the graph was there with it, it's like, wow, this product that we have is even more phenomenal than what the numbers say. If you can see it in a graphic format to see what your options are in other places and how well it outshines everything that's out there, it's incredible, and it tells its own story.
Patrick, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I'll hit on two things. First, to the point of time, an assumption I made is that, over about a year, not much changes. I've completely switched that. Everything changes in a year. The world, society is going so quickly. A person's interests, their concerns, their fears, their anxieties, their frictions, all of it's changing at a very rapid pace. And that's where I look at, one of the greatest ways to maintain a relationship, right, is to continually provide value, right? And communicate is one thing, but then also understand, pick up where you left off as far as understanding where they are in life. And And I had a conversation at a conference I was at a couple of weeks ago where there were this firm, and it was an insurance conference, insurance company conference. But there was a firm that solely focused on a very, growth, cash oriented strategy. And I look at just, again, how whole life specifically can be used to just massively impact a person's, latter years, whether it's weaning off of full-time work or gravitating toward legacy and the end of life scenarios. There's so much power there. And again, that goes to the multiple use, the multidimensional use of one product. But that's just it's a powerful conversation, especially after you've already established a relationship. But this is why, again, looking at what Todd has developed with Truth Concepts, but also the client-facing presentation software, the Perpetual Wealth Way, what that allows you to do is really easily pick up where you left off. When you're able to save now a graphical representation, not just numbers, but a graphical representation of where they're at, now going to them, being able to potentially stay the same, but maybe things have changed. And that's where you can start to, again, look at other, I would say, riders, add-ons, other products, stuff for kids, spouses, college, but also getting into how to leverage whole life when it comes to the other assets that they have. And that's the beauty of asset flow, right? Where it's a unique calculator, one that I consider is a separation of a prosperity economics advisor and a typical financial planner, because it allows us to put everything together, right, in an accurate way, a mathematically accurate way that you can take a snapshot in time, but also project in the future, but then go into, next year's annual review, the annual review after that, and just update balances is pretty much all you have to do. Maybe some tax rates if tax rates change. But the idea is that there's power in some of these tools that will allow us to be more efficient with our time and continually add value to clients.
Yeah, because ultimately the point is to get the client to understand what it is you're talking about and not talk over the top of them. It goes, kind of hand in hand with the language that we use. And like Kim was talking about earlier too, it's, how often do we say PUA, you can add PUAs here and you can do this. Do we ever say paid up additions? If you look at the wording, it tells you what it is. These are paid up policies basically that you're purchasing inside of there. And so it starts to make a little bit more sense on how all that fits together. Chris Tormey talked about Social Security as a pension maximization tool. That's just another addition to add in. Am I personally going to go to a client and talk to them and do the sale on that? No, but that becomes part of the benefits when we start talking about the big picture. Mr. Client, you're wanting to do these things. Hey, here's another way, another facet, another piece of this policy that allows you to be able to maximize that income stream. Because now then, even though this isn't your pension, it makes your pension better. Okay. Even though this isn't this, it makes it better. This is not your 401k, but it makes it spendable better. So all these pieces fit together. And when we talk about just having one sales idea, when we just do one thing and we don't incorporate all those other pieces, man, we're really cutting the life insurance knowledge short, because truth is most of the other assets can only do the one thing. Okay, we have an asset, we have access to an asset that does multiple things, and then we talk about one piece of it. I bet my cash can beat your cash over time. Okay, that's really not the big picture of the power in what we have.
It also is somewhat of a challenge, right? Because measurement ultimately becomes an objective way to evaluate something. And when it does multiple things, sometimes it's hard to measure multiple things. And also it's hard to quantify some of those things, that the whole life does, right? Because you have to have multiple products, and adding multiple products in order to do what one does, it's a challenge. But I think, there was a question that was asked this week or last week in the Facebook group about the whole buy term, invest the difference. Right. And there are specific calculators that allow you to help a person evaluate that. Now, you as an advisor, understanding it first is paramount, because that degree of confidence is going to do the majority of the communication with the client. But if you get to the point where they want you to objectively evaluate this versus that, that's where you got to be proficient with calculators. But anyway, it's just one of those, it's the challenge, right? Where you can objectively, you want to understand so that human bias, right, isn't what you're betting the farm on. At the same time, right, it's sometimes difficult to do that with a product that has multi-dimensional benefits.
So I've got a question for our community. How many times have you asked your client to measure something backwards? So as typical financial people, we're always measuring forwards, right? We're using calculators, we're making projections, we're trying to figure out something in the future and then working backwards, but it's still a forward measurement. So Dan Sullivan's newest book that's out in October is called The Gap and the Gain. And Elizabeth's going to pop a link into it in the chat box. In that book, he talks about the utmost life-affirming measurement is to measure backwards. And so I've started to ask my clients things that they can measure backwards. So what I mean by that is, how much did you save last year? And again, save is a verb, right? And I'm not talking like coupon clipping and I saved $20 by spending $40 at the store. I want to know how much money they've put away or how much progress they've made on some particular goal. And in Dan's book, he talks about, again, this life-affirming switch of measuring backwards and looking at the progress that you've made versus always measuring forward. And the reason the book is called The Gap and the Gain, and for those of you that have been around Strategic Coach for a long time, you certainly heard this term, is because there is a permanent gap when we measure forward. Because us human beings, no matter what it is that we're seeking, we always want something a little better and a little better and a little better. And so when we measure forward, there's always a gap between where we are and where we want to be. And if we're constantly looking at that gap, then we can really catch ourselves in a depression, in a lack of confidence, in a sense of, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get there, because where there is always moving. Whereas if we'll turn and measure progress, measure what we did last year, that is a gain. So the gap is in front of us, the gain is behind us. And if we turn around and measure backwards and we look at the gain that we've made in whatever category it is, it could be how much increased muscle you have, or how much you saved, or how much, I always look for things to add rather than things to take away, right? How many more vegetables I ate rather than how much less cookies I ate, or something like that. Then you feel better. You're more confident. You feel like you have capacity and capability when you're measuring backwards rather than measuring forwards. So enjoy the book if you're a reader. I've got a couple other suggestions if you're not, that I'll cover in a minute. But Patrick, back to you. Any additional thoughts?
I'm gonna hit on that point, right? Because looking at, looking in the rear view mirror and measuring the past, a lot of, I would say, gain comes from things that aren't measured, right? Because you can't, there's things, the most important things in life can't be measured, right? Love for your spouse. How much do you love? 5 or 6, maybe. If I love my kids, 6.5, right? You can't measure, you can't measure that. How much stress do you have? 15 at 0.2. It's the most important things in life, right? Aren't measurable. At the same time, you can get a gauge. And I like to use the whole, on a scale of 1 to 10, so you can start to get an idea of how to measure. But I think if you look at it in the rearview mirror, one of the benefits that we have, which is this feature that is not, you can't quantify it, is certainty. And Mike Isom, who I know is on here, loves the term, the economic value of certainty, because you can't measure certainty, but there's an economic value to it, right? So it's an interesting conversation. But looking really at, again, positioning the products that we advocate and why we advocate them, it really comes down to, I would say, what this financial stress causes as far as hardship in life, right? Whether it's work, whether it's health, energy, whether it's, relationships with their kids or wife, right? It's still proven that financial stress is the major cause of illness, but it's also some of the major cause of relationship damage. And that's, again, one of those values, the multi-dimensional, value of whole life is you have the highest degree of certainty compared to any other financial product, right? And again, measuring, sometimes you want to measure at the same time. It's hard to measure the most important things. But I believe that part of conversation, right? This is, I think, a powerful idea is, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you at with your financial life, right? That says a lot. And then tell me what a level 10 looks like. Tell me what a level 8, 9 looks like. Like, what does life look like at that level? And that, again, is a really easy way to understand where a person is and where they want to go. But typically where they're at is it's a byproduct of where they came from. So understanding their past and what caused them to get to the point that they're at, what that score, that, feeling score, I guess, right, is going to be based on the circumstances that you have the opportunity to improve, or to at least teach them and encourage them, inspire them to improve.
And I think it's also a really important time to let them talk and zip your mouth.
Totally.
And other than got it, or or yes, tell me more. And I know I'm super quick to judge, to jump in, to want to help, but sometimes people don't want to help. They just want to talk. They just want to verbalize whatever it is that has maybe never come out of their mouths ever before. Todd, you had a thought?
Oh, no, just it's really, it goes back to something that we've talked about all along the way. And it's rooted in that relationship piece, and it's rooted in really listening, really understanding, really letting the client be the hero in the conversation, right? Instead of us. And so, and I think that's part of not answering those questions, right? Letting the client do it, letting them feel like, hey, they answered the question, they saw the light, and you might have given them some guidance to get there, but they're the ones that ultimately came up with a solution, and that's where it needs to be.
So, Shalari, you were asking about the universal course. I just hit the highlights and don't want to spend a lot of time on it today, because you will be getting an email with quite a bit of information in the next couple of weeks. But it is a new course that's being offered by the Prosperity Economics Movement, and it will have the video with Garrett Gunderson and Todd Langford. It'll have some deep dive white papers, some very more surface-y single one sheet summary types of papers, and some other goodies in it for you. So look for your email in the coming months. Patrick, do you want to talk a little bit about Summit in October and maybe any other things in terms of where you think we're headed in the movement and what we're working on?
Yeah, well, there's lots of updates coming to the website. I was actually on there today, and some of the material resources you referenced are already on there, unless I have like some sort of special access, which I don't think I have. But there's some of those resources on the website, prosperityeconomicsadvisors.com. We're really thinking through a lot of what we talked about on Summit, the live Summit this year. This summer, which focused on the primary frameworks of a prosperity economics advisor practice. And so we're likely going to pick up on those themes and going to do lots of details in the coming year. But Summit is going to be virtual in October. So end of October, depending on, we're going to be using our new office space, there may be an opportunity for a few people to be live. Not 100% sure on that yet, but it's going to be live streamed, and it's going to be 2 days, not 3 days, 2 days, and hope you guys can make it. We, are trying to put a lot of effort of what's working for us, what's going through our mind, what has benefited us, what's led to success, and provide that to you guys in the form of education, communication, as well as tools. And I know we'll probably get into a lot of the conversation around some truth concept stuff, since Todd has been heavily working on that and has had some discoveries and epiphanies just regarding when you're able to look at numbers, it tells one story, but when you actually see a graphical representation, it sometimes can tell not necessarily a different story, but it can add to the story. It can amplify the story. So yeah, we're going to focus a lot of that Element in October. So yeah, where do they get registered? Is it summitforadvisors.com?
Yep, same website. It's always been. Actually, the shopping cart's not open yet. Will be probably in another couple weeks or so, but I want to give you the dates. Before I give you the October dates, so we have a truth training coming up, and it's in September on the 22nd, which is a Wednesday, and then the 23rd and 24th, Thursday and Friday. And both virtual and live in person in Houston are available. And so truthconcepts.com/truth training. Elizabeth, if you want to pop that in the chat box, that would be great. Todd is going to be unveiling all of the graphs of the calculators that he's done. So we'll see how many calculators he gets to, but there is an entire overhaul of each calculator being done in a graphical format. And you are maybe a third of the way through. So we will continue the press onward through every waking hour of Todd's time to graphikize the calculators. And so if you would like to see those, come to Truth Training. Even if you come virtual, you will get a very good experience because of the new microphones that we have in the room that enable you to hear all the participants' conversations. And we do some Zoom group shares for the people that are not in the room, et cetera. So lots of good going on at September Truth Training. Again, Houston, September 22nd, 3rd, and 4th. And then the October Summit is the 28th and 29th. That's a Thursday and a Friday. That will probably be 10 to 4 Central, which is 9 to 3 Mountain. Just those 2 days, again, all virtual, although Patrick said we will. So Todd and I physically will go up to Utah. So we haven't decided yet if we'll allow anybody else in the room, but maybe we will. We'll just have to see. And again, there is a good microphone set up there. So you've got some abilities to benefit virtually from if anybody does end up being in the room. And again, we'll do quite a bit of group sharing. Something that I've noticed, and Elizabeth just alerted me her computer died. So we'll get that link later. The Truth Training link is what I was going to pop in there. Lost my train of thought.
Well, let me add something too.
Thank
you. This is kind of time coincidence, but most of you guys know that based on some of the new 7702 legislation, that carriers have reworked product. There's some that are available now to illustrate, but we're going to be putting together a comparison tool that will likely compare just One America's product, Penn Mutual's product, and Mass Mutual's product, and we'll do some different scenarios. And then we'll likely add Guardian. And then if you guys have carriers you want to add, then we'll give you some of the criteria so that you can add those numbers to the analysis so that we can kind of evaluate side by side what these changes are. What's also cool is that, at least from the research that we've done, the obviously the market, just the nature of a market creates efficiency. And, this is a product that is desirable, and it's now become something that carriers realize like they need to continue to innovate, continue to improve, right? Because their competitors are also improving. So it's a really cool time and space that we're in, especially with a lot of these 7702 changes. So the reason I bring that up is because, this comparison will be the initial go, but what we've heard is that there's budgeted time, energy, resources to improving those products even more come next year. So it's really cool what's going on in our space right now.
Well, and Todd and I have taken the 2 versions of the Guardian and run them through the Truth Concepts funding calculator, which is the best way to compare apples to apples. And Todd's actually even working on a direct comparison. I mean, we can just put 2 fundings side by side, but he'll have a direct comparison calculator something at some point. So all good things. Okay, I think we handled all of the questions. I have a little favor to ask you guys. Kim and her team just went through a rebrand, and I would love to get our very kind community's eyes on our new website just to make sure that we don't have missing links, broken pieces, misspellings, all the things that can happen when you do a new website. Plus, you are welcome to do the opt-in. We have a brand new guide out that's called Your Guide to Activating Prosperity. And clearly it's written for our clients, but there's a new poem in there. There's some information about the 7 principles of prosperity, because inside P for P, we just use 7, whereas the economics movement uses 12. There's some information about the prosperity ladder in there, which is a piece that I've had for a long, long time, but just haven't really put out into our advisor community. And so you're welcome to any of that. And I would love it if you just took a peek at the website, took a peek at any of the other pieces and parts, and let me know if there's anything broken or misspelled or needs to be fixed. I would be super, super grateful. And as you know, everything that we do, we try to then create for the community here in a different branding way so that you can make use of it. So I will put that site, prosperitythinkers.com, in the chat box. I think, Claudia, that's what you were asking about. Did I miss any other questions there? Did you see anything, Patrick?
One was, I saw one, which is when we're going to do the comparison. It's going to coincide with Summit at the end of October, likely. Beautiful.
So come to Summit. Awesome. Todd, anything else you want to add? We can quit a few minutes early today.
No, I think we're good. I think, the big piece is we have an incredible tool to offer to our clients. And a piece of that is, the tools aren't really, they're pieces of the puzzle. It's the strategy, it's the communication, it's the fact of getting our clients to act and make a change and make a difference. And, that's the only way we change their current scenario and the scenarios of generations to come, right? So we need to get our clients to implement in whatever way we can make that happen. And I think a big piece of that is incorporating all these pieces, changing the thought, changing the talk to a one-trick pony to this is how the strategy is going to change your life. This is how, even in the event of not the perfect scenario, it still works out. Those are the kind of conversations I think we really need to have with our clients.
I love it. Patrick, last thoughts?
What's been said has been said. I don't know if I have anything to add. But
we should let Todd.
Looking forward to end of the year events. I mean, first and foremost, like Summit, it's gonna be awesome. I'm super excited for that because the technology piece is so easy that we don't have to spend any time and energy there and can just focus on, connecting with you guys. But yeah, it'll be a good event. And then lots of cool things happening in our industry. Obviously, it's a time where there's tons of uncertainty. There's tons going on, right, that we could be afraid of, but at the same time there's so many amazing things happening. So exciting time to be alive.
Yes, it is. Todd, you want to share your quote about that Patrick butchered and I will butcher again about comparing the best of everything else to the worst of whole life?
Oh, right. And that comes down to the whole thing. We bring that on ourselves. That's typically what happens so often, right? Because we talk about one aspect of what the tool does. But typically, whenever we're making a comparison of what we have to offer our client, even from just the cash standpoint, we're looking at the minimums. We're looking at only if we parked money in the policy, never touched it, never used it to take advantage of opportunities, never used it to keep a tragedy from occurring because we might lose a piece of real estate or whatever else and not have a cash flow source to be able to keep that going. So that's what the life insurance has the ability to do. It has the ability to fill those gaps and be so much bigger than what we're comparing, whereas really what it's typically compared against is a one-trick pony that can only do one thing, and it will never be more than what it is, right? So we have with our tool, we have the ability, we're showing the worst case scenario of our tool against the best case scenario of everybody else's tool for the most part, right?
How can you say more than that? We just need to end. Don't you just love listening to Todd? Thank you. All right. Thank you. We appreciate you all very, very much. And lots of gratitude going around. We will see you hopefully at Truth Training, either live or in person. We'll see you next month for our October webinar. We'll see you at the end of October for the summit, and along the way on the blog and in the Facebook group. So thanks to Elizabeth. I see Katie's in there as well. Yes, Raymond, always thumbs up. Take care, everybody.
Bye.